Berlin is still the Weimar capital, roughly 4.2 million people, but the mood is brittle. In late January 1933, President Hindenburg appoints Adolf Hitler chancellor in a coalition, with Nazis holding only a few ministries.
I'm right by the Reichstag, and the building looks solid, but people keep glancing over their shoulders as cars pull up and doors shut.
From this appointment, the risk is simple. Power can become permanent fast. Within weeks, the Nazis push new police powers, and then the Reichstag burns in late February. The next morning, an emergency decree suspends key civil liberties: speech, press, assembly, privacy. So arrests become routine across Berlin. In practice, the first targets are communists and social democrats, and by March, the regime forces a vote on the Enabling Act. The tally is 441 to 94, and once it passes, Hitler can make laws without parliament. After that, other parties are squeezed out, and by midsummer, Germany is a one-party state on paper and in the street.
Look at these steps, official entrances, polished stone. A vote here feels orderly, and that sense of order helps the takeover look legal.
Now the consequence hits daily routine. Newspapers vanish from kiosks, unions are broken, and people learn to lower their voices because men in brown uniforms stand at corners and outside meeting halls. The state opens the first concentration camp at Dachau in early March 1933 and calls it protective custody, which means you can be held without trial. Employers are pushed to fire unreliable workers, teachers and civil servants sign loyalty pledges, and denunciations start to spread. By spring turning into summer, Berliners adjust to a city where politics happens at night, behind apartment doors.
Down this street, a kiosk owner stacks fewer papers, and an SA man watches who stops to read. People start walking past without looking up.
So in barely 2 months, Parliament is bent into dictatorship by decree, fear, and paperwork. The party is now the state, but inside it, one force still thinks it can demand more. The SA under Ernst Röhm, and that tension is about to turn violent.
So even with the opposition pushed out, the movement still has a fault line inside it. A year later, that tension pulls us to a lakeside town in Bavaria. I'm in Bad Wiessee now, outside a quiet hotel by the water. On this morning in 1934, the party's own ranks start turning on each other.
Bad Wiessee is a quiet Bavarian resort, which is exactly why this morning works. Ernst Röhm is here with SA leaders, and the SA is huge. Millions of men who think they made the revolution. But the army hates their street power, conservatives fear their violence, and Himmler's SS wants them out of the way. So Hitler comes in person at dawn on the 30th of June, 1934, storms into the hotel, and orders arrests. Röhm is dragged out in his nightclothes, and at the same time in Berlin, SS teams move on prepared lists. This is not only about the SA. Old rivals, critics, and inconvenient witnesses are pulled in too. Over the next 2 or 3 days, men are shot without trial. Bodies disappear into courtyards and cells, and the exact death toll stays disputed, officially in the dozens, likely well over 100. Hitler sells it as self-defense, and most Germans hear rumors on trains, not names in print.
Now the arrests here ripple out fast, so we're back in Berlin, where offices stay lit all night and SS cars stop without sirens.
The payoff is immediate. With the SA leadership broken, the army breathes easier and swears loyalty, because its main rival is gone. Himmler and Heydrich use the moment to expand the SS into a state within the state, running intelligence, policing, and camps with less interference. Röhm sits in a cell, gets offered a pistol to save face, refuses, and is shot on the 1st of July. A day later, Hitler tells the Reichstag he acted as the nation's judge.
People in the party think membership protects them, then this happens. You watch faces change when someone even says Röhm's name.
After this purge, no force inside the movement can bargain with Hitler. When Hindenburg dies in early August 1934, Hitler fuses offices and takes the title Führer. With the country secured by fear, he turns his attention to Germany's borders. Danzig is a free city under the League of Nations, a port of roughly 400,000 where Germans are the majority. Through 1938 and 39, Hitler demands the corridor and a return to the Reich, and Poland refuses. Before dawn, in early September 1939, the battleship Schleswig-Holstein opens fire on Westerplatte, and the border ignites at once.
Down by Westerplatte, tourists take photos and kids run around, but this is where the first shells tell Europe The rules have changed.
Germany calls this Fall Weiss, and the scale is blunt. About 1.5 million troops, thousands of tanks, and over 2,000 aircraft. The method is blitzkrieg. Armor punches through, radios keep units moving, and the Luftwaffe hits rail hubs and bridges, so Polish units cannot regroup. Poland mobilizes close to 1 million soldiers, but much of the kit is older, and in the first days German columns drive 50 kilometers and more in a day. Cities take the hit too, because bombing breaks water in hospitals, and civilians start fleeing with carts and bundles. And there is a second lever. In late August, Germany signs the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact with the Soviet Union, with a secret plan to divide Poland. So while Warsaw is still fighting in late September, Soviet forces enter from the east, and Poland is squeezed from both sides. Warsaw holds under siege and shelling until the end of September. Then the state collapses, but the occupation is only beginning.
I'm at the old borderline, and it's easy to miss until you picture armored columns crossing here before anyone can move them back.
After barely 5 weeks, Poland stops existing as a state, and that quick win convinces Hitler the gamble can keep working again.
Within days, the war spreads west. Britain and France declare war in early September, but they do not strike at once, and Poland is left exposed. Germany and the Soviet Union split the country, and the German zone becomes annexed regions plus the general government, run by Hans Frank from Krakow. Occupation shows up as curfews, ration cards, forced labor, and police checks, and anyone linked to politics or the army is suddenly at risk. German forces start mass shootings of Polish elites, while Jewish communities are forced into ghettos under German rule. By the end of September, Warsaw surrenders after the siege, and daily life becomes queues and papers shown at checkpoints. For Hitler, the speed feels like proof, and that confidence points him toward the Soviet Union. In just over 5 weeks, Poland is crushed, and Europe learns that Germany can dismantle a state faster than diplomacy can react. But the regime treats this as a rehearsal, and the next plan is larger, a war of conquest against the Soviet Union. So, the Western Front goes quiet, and Berlin spends 2 years arming, drilling, and setting up a strike to the east.
So we leave this coast and go to the Bug River in early summer 1941, because the next attack is on the Soviet Union.
I'm from a town on this river. Last night people still talk about harvest work, and now the sky flashes like it's tearing open.
At 3:15 before dawn, the guns start. And we grab coats without thinking. Nobody says war, but everyone moves like it.
The Bug River is the border, and before dawn on June 22, 1941, Germany launches Barbarossa. About 3.5 million Axis troops, thousands of tanks, and nearly 3,000 kilometers of front move at once.
I'm standing on the Bug right now, wide reeds, slow water, and it's obvious why the planners pick it. You can cross fast, anywhere.
The plan splits into 3 army groups, so the blow lands from the Baltic down toward the Black Sea, all at the same hour. Because the Red Army is caught mid-mobilization, German armor and aircraft cut roads and rail lines, and whole units lose orders. Within days, the first encirclements form, and you see it in the prisoner columns. Tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. Minsk falls in late June after less than a week, and roughly 300,000 Soviet soldiers are taken in that pocket alone. Smolensk follows through July, where resistance hardens, but the Germans keep gambling on speed instead of rest and supply. By September, the focus swings south, and the Kiev trap closes. Around 665,000 Soviet troops are captured. Across the first 3 months, around 3 million Soviet prisoners are in German hands, and that number becomes a policy problem. Food, shelter, medical care, those are decisions, and here the decision is neglect, which turns captivity into mass death.
In Minsk, I'm by a memorial stone. The city is rebuilt, but the timetable is the shock. This place collapses in 6 days.
Occupation arrives right behind the front, and it isn't improvised. It's organized into districts with German bosses and local police. In practice, villages lose livestock and grain first, then young people are pushed into forced labor, and refusal brings beatings or arrest. For prisoners of war, the system is even harsher. Open-air pens, little food, and epidemics, so millions die before the war ends. At the same time, special units, the Einsatzgruppen, follow the troops with lists, rounding up Jews and shooting them near their towns. This is the Holocaust by bullets, and it spreads across Ukraine, Belarus, the Baltics, wherever the front advances. Kyiv is a major Soviet city, close to 1 million people before the war, and it falls in mid-September 1941. Days later, notices order Jews to gather with documents and valuables, and many think it means resettlement or registration. Instead, the route leads to a ravine on the city's edge, and the mechanics of murder are set up like an assembly line.
Right, we're in Kyiv now, and the road dips toward Babin Yar. It's green today, but the geography still funnels people forward.
Late September 1941, orders pull families out with bags, and the closer they get, the more they hear commands, not questions.
At Babin Yar, on September 29th and 30th, 33,771 Jews are shot in 2 days. The shooters are Einsatzgruppe C with police units, and they use paperwork, cordons, and rotation to keep killing non-stop. Over the following months and years, more groups are murdered here: Jews, Roma, Soviet POWs. So, the ravine becomes a repeated crime scene.
I'm with a resident whose family lives through the occupation. When the Germans take the city, what changes first in daily life?
First, it's the curfew and the papers. You hide food, you whisper on stairs, and you learn that a knock at night can erase a neighbor.
By late 1941, the Blitz stalls near Moscow, and the war shifts into a grind that soon hits the Volga, Stalingrad.
I'm on the Volga bank in Stalingrad, and the wind cuts through broken concrete. Even now, you can tell this city is fought over, room by room. The last thing Germany wants after Moscow is another long winter fight. But the march south puts them right here, and there's no easy way out.
Stalingrad sits on the Volga, a big industrial city of over 400,000. And in late August 1942, the Luftwaffe burns it. About 40,000 civilians die in a day. So survivors crawl into basements, while the 6th Army, roughly 250,000 men, pushes into rubble. Soviet commanders force close fighting, so German air power helps less. And the front line can run through a stairwell or a single wall. Snipers trade shots across courtyards, patrols fight for a kitchen. And a single apartment block like Pavlov's house can pin down a battalion. Mamayev Kurgan, the tractor works, the Red October factory. Each becomes a grid of rooms, not streets, and both sides feed men into the same ruins. By autumn, the Germans hold most of the city, but they can't cut the last Soviet strip on the riverbank, which means supplies still slip in by boat at night. With temperatures dropping toward -30, weapons jam, wounds fester, and 90% of buildings are smashed into cover that kills you. Every week that the city holds, Germany spends fuel and men it can't replace quickly, and the quick win logic from 1939 is gone.
See this slope at Mamayev Kurgan. Soldiers climb it, lose it, climb again, until the ground is packed with metal and splinters.
In mid-November 1942, the Soviets launch Operation Uranus, hitting the weaker Romanian and Italian lines north and south of the city. Within days, the breakthrough meets behind the Germans, and by late November, the ring closes around Stalingrad, with close to 300,000 Axis troops inside. Paulus asks to break out while he still has tanks, but Hitler orders him to hold, promising the Luftwaffe can fly in 500 tons a day. In reality, the airlift delivers a fraction, sometimes 100 tons, so bread rations shrink, horses are eaten, and typhus spreads through dugouts. A relief attempt in December stalls short. The pocket tightens in January, and Paulus is promoted to field marshal as a message: do not surrender. Then, at the end of January, he gives in anyway. And on the 2nd of February, the last German groups lay down arms. About 91,000 go into captivity, and only a few thousand ever return, which tells Berlin the war has flipped direction.
When Paulus surrenders, the news hits Berlin like a drop plate in a quiet room, and suddenly people listen for what the radio avoids.
Back in Berlin, the regime can't hide this defeat, so it declares days of mourning, and newspapers print black borders instead of victory maps. On the 18th of February 1943, Goebbels speaks in the Sportpalast and demands total war, meaning longer shifts, more women in factories, fewer exemptions. The myth of invincibility breaks in kitchens and tram stops because people now know an entire army can vanish, and the state can only answer with more control. 117. Host. If you're a German civilian in early 1943, How does Stalingrad show up at home? What changes in work, in food, in what people dare say?
If you're a German civilian in early 1943, how does Stalingrad show up at home? What changes in work, in food, in what people dare say?
The first change is rations and hours. The factory runs longer, boys disappear from class, and even loyal neighbors stop promising victory out loud.
Berlin in early 1945 is smaller and hungry. Air raid gaps where blocks used to be. The Red Army reaches the Oder after the winter offensive, so the city waits for siege. In mid-April, Soviet armies open the Berlin operation with millions of troops and thousands of tanks, while German defense leans on battered units, Volkssturm, and boys with rifles.
I'm on the edge of Berlin, and you can still find flak towers and scarred brick. The city is turning itself into a last barricade.
Within days, Soviet artillery walks street to street, and German commanders hang deserter signs on lampposts to keep men in place. Civilians crowd cellars with buckets of water and a radio because firestorms and shelling make moving upstairs deadly. By late April, the city is cut off, so any retreat is inside the ring, not out of it. Down in the Führerbunker, Hitler keeps issuing orders to units that no longer exist, and staff officers stop correcting him. On the afternoon of April 30th, he kills himself with a Walther pistol, and Eva Braun dies beside him. Aides carry the bodies into the garden crater, douse them with fuel, and burn them there under shell fire. That night, Soviet troops fight into the Reichstag, and a red flag goes up over the ruins as a signal, not a ceasefire. Shooting continues in nearby streets for days, because symbols don't feed ammo or end a battle.
Right here at the Reichstag, you can still trace the old facade. In 1945, it's a target, a compass point for both armies. When the flag goes up on April 30th, it tells the world Berlin is falling. But inside the city, people are still dying by the block.
After Hitler's death, command passes by scraps of paper and hurried calls, and the garrison runs out of room and time. On the 2nd of May, the Berlin commander signs surrender orders, and units lay down arms in clusters, not one neat moment. Germany's overall capitulation is signed first in Reims in early May before Western allies, but the Soviets demand a second ceremony in Berlin. So, late on May 8th, in Karlshorst, German officers sign the final act of unconditional surrender across a long table under lamps. On one side sit Soviet and Allied representatives. On the other, men who know their signatures end the war in Europe. Outside, some streets cheer and others stay quiet, because the same page means relief, defeat, and occupation.
I'm at the site of the Führerbunker now. It's marked, built over, but the end happens 8 meters down, in cramped rooms and stale air.
Berlin's center is smashed, whole districts flattened, and hundreds of thousands are without homes when the shooting stops. Civilian deaths in the battle reach into the tens of thousands, and hospitals work with little power or medicine. Across the war, the toll is global, more than 70 million dead, with the Soviet Union losing about 27 million. Poland loses about 6 million, Germany several million, and 6 million Jews are murdered in the Holocaust, leaving Europe scarred and emptied. In 12 years, Germany moves from chancellor appointment to surrender, from legal decrees to ruins and mass graves.
May 8th, 1945, Berlin goes quiet. The war in Europe ends, and the numbers stay on paper and in families.
From January 1933 to May 1945, power turns into dictatorship, then into total war. Promises of a 1,000-year Reich end as Berlin signs surrender, and Europe counts the dead. Over 70 million worldwide, 6 million Jews murdered, cities flattened. It takes 4,386 days to go from a chancellor's oath to a bunker pistol. And it closes near where it begins. The Reichstag above ground, Karlshorst on paper, and silence in the streets.
I'm standing above the bunker site again, traffic passes, but in 1945, this spot is the endpoint. One shot, then the counting.